Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're putting on our database detective hats to really decode the Microsoft DP-800 Developing AI-Enabled Database Solutions exam. Now, if you're aiming for this certification, we already know you know your way around a database. But today, we're going to look at the exam through a completely different lens. So, let's dive right in. We're going to be breaking down the highly authoritative AADEMI study guide. And what's super fascinating here is how it shifts the focus totally away from just memorizing SQL syntax. It's really all about mastering an operational troubleshooting methodology. The exam doesn't just test if you know a command, it tests if you can connect a foundational concept to a messy, practical production scenario. Basically, it's about finding the actual root cause instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the symptom.
Here is our map of the key exam domains. We've got 1. Introduction to DP-800. 2. The evidence-first mindset. 3. Designing database objects. 4. Data control with programmability. 5. Navigating AI-assisted development. And finally, 6. Avoiding common exam traps. Consider this our detective's roadmap to outsmarting the exam scenarios.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the evidence-first mindset, becoming a database detective. This concept is a total game changer for how you look at production symptoms. The guide treats this as your absolute core mantra. Observe the owning object, prove the dependency, then remediate. You really have to remember that the Microsoft SQL platform relies on a consistent chain from the caller's intent all the way down to the database object state. You absolutely must verify the object that actually controls the behavior before you apply any sort of fix. If you jump straight to a solution without proving the dependency first, well, you're probably falling right into one of the exam's traps. When testing your skills, the exam demands a very strict step-by-step execution path. First, you identify the exam owner, like checking an execution plan. Second, inspect the metadata and runtime state. And third, you run a narrow verification command. Following this exact order prevents that classic amateur mistake of tuning a nearby service while the real control object is just sitting there unverified.
So how does this actually play out? Picture this micro scenario from the guide. An application query slows down significantly right after some semi-structured JSON attributes are added to a high-volume transactional table. A JSON query is suddenly slow. What do you do?
This brilliantly illustrates the difference between a novice and a certified pro. The guide practically yells at us not to fall for the distractor of just throwing more compute power at the problem. No way. The true DP-800 way is to investigate the execution plan, the JSON predicate access path, and partition elimination first to prove that dependency. You literally have to verify if a JSON_value scan is eating up your CPU before you even think about touching that pricing tier. Let's move on to Section 2, designing database objects, making the right call. This is all about matching the exact right tool to a specific operational requirement. This is where precision is absolutely crucial. Take the choice between a sequence and an identity column. It entirely depends on whether the generation behavior needs to exist outside of a single table. If multiple workflows need independent number generation across multiple tables, a sequence is your answer because it's not tied to one table and several paths can reuse it. But if you just need a simple surrogate key inside one single table owned by a single insert pattern, identity is way easier, and it's the correct choice. It all comes down to the scope of the dependency. Now, what if you encounter this symptom? A partitioned table query is scanning all partitions, even when the date predicate specifically targets just 1 month. Your detective instinct should immediately scream at you to inspect the partition function boundaries. You've got to prove whether that date predicate actually supports partition elimination. If the execution plan shows it touching all allocation ranges, then the alignment or the predicate shape is broken. And listen, no amount of indexing is going to save you until you fix that boundary. All right, Section 3, data control with programmability, securing the reusable contract. Let's see how this builds on our evidence-first mindset. The exam loves to frame programmability objects as the hidden control points behind inconsistent data APIs. If a stored procedure or a view fails, you have to isolate the specific dependency chain. Are the parameters right? Is the transaction scoped properly? Are there recursive side effects happening from a trigger? Is the schema binding intact? If you just jump straight to broadening permissions or rewriting application code, you are totally masking the actual database layer defect. And here is the crucial takeaway. The trap is to just broaden base table permissions when an API call fails. But the DP-800 way,
We validate executable permissions and verify object dependency graphs first. It's absolutely vital to prove that the caller can access the object, like a stored procedure, without needing broad, direct table permissions. This makes sure the database object safely owns the reusable contract, keeping the user isolated from the underlying schema.
Okay, time for a classic advanced T-SQL mystery. Say your extraction query uses row_number and returns the right rows in small tests, but in production, it occasionally returns a different top row for tied values. What should be corrected first? Think about it. The query runs, there's no syntax error, but the data is just wrong. The fix here is to add a deterministic secondary order by expression. You have to confirm the relational shape and deterministic ordering before you ever try tuning the query text or messing with the database size. If there's a tie in the data and you haven't defined a secondary sort, the engine simply doesn't guarantee the order. That is a logic defect, my friends, not a performance issue.
Next up is Section 4, Navigating AI-Assisted Development. Trust but verify. This is the exam's most modern challenge. Let's look at how tools like GitHub Copilot introduce totally new layers of required evidence. Understanding an MCP SQL endpoint is vital. It's a model context protocol tool identity and scope boundary that ranges from read-only to controlled write permissions, and it's heavily reliant on endpoint registration. Basically, it defines what your AI tool can actually see and do. A generated SQL change might look totally plausible, but it could secretly be introducing insecure object access through a misconfigured endpoint. You always have to check the permissions requested by the MCP tool itself. There's a quote from the study guide you need to take to heart. Do not trust AI-generated SQL until schema, security, performance, and test impact are reviewed. You have to treat all generated output as a candidate diff that requires strict human review gates. If an exam question says Copilot suggests a script granting broad permissions just to make a query work, the answer is never to blindly execute it. Review the schema drift and test impact first, every single time. Finally, we've reached Section 5, Avoiding Common Exam Traps, Security and Deployment. Let's decode some high-risk traps, because the exam writers are sneaky and offer highly plausible yet completely wrong answers. Take Always Encrypted, for example. It's a security feature focused on column-level encryption, where the key path and client driver evidence are your ultimate proof of operational control. So, if an application connects fine but fails when calling a secured model, you have to isolate the encryption key path. Don't start guessing at network latency or database permissions. The failure state is almost always hiding in the client driver evidence and key rotation.
Same deal with dynamic data masking. The exam will intentionally try to confuse you between visual masking and strict row-level security filtering. Your first move has to be isolating the masking behavior and the effective principle. Remember, masking just hides data visually. It doesn't actually prevent a user from querying it if they know the values. You need to separate a true database security defect from mere application-level noise. Okay, lock these 3 specific traps into your memory right now. Wrong options on the DP-800 will always attempt to repair a nearby component while totally skipping the actual dependency. 1. Do not scale compute before checking query store and wait types. 2. Do not broaden database permissions for token audience issues. And 3. Do not deploy a SQL project without drift review and test validation. Always stick to the evidence. I'll leave you with this one final case to test your detective mindset. If a fuzzy customer name search is perfectly accurate in testing but consumes way too much CPU in production, what is the best design adjustment? Well, before you apply heavy, expensive fuzzy scoring against an entire table, shouldn't you narrow down the candidate rows with standard indexed predicates first to reduce your search space? Find the true dependency, apply the narrowest fix, and you will absolutely crush the DP-800 exam. But really, it kind of makes you wonder, how many hidden, unverified dependencies are silently draining resources in your own production databases right now?